Hey guys, we're really lucky tonight to have Becky Mucchetti here as our speaker. She's my favorite neighbor. She lived next door to me for a long time. We got to know each other well. We have a lot in common. Our birthdays are a day apart. We both run planning zoning. She still is and holds the record. Both have white hair. So I asked her to come and speak to us because there's been a lot of news about what's going on in Hartford about zoning, and also I thought you might like to know what's going on in town about zoning. So without further ado, Becky. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a real treat. I was telling the ladies at my table, this is the first time I've done anything when I haven't been wearing jeans and a sweater in over a year. And to have actual people this is just fabulous. So thank you so much for inviting me. As Sue said, I've been on planning and zoning since 2001. To the amusement of family and friends, I went to the meetings 5 years before that, just because I started out as sort of a disgruntled neighbor and started going to the meetings to find out what I didn't understand about land use in town, and found out that planning and zoning is actually an amazing group of people who make decisions that affect everybody's daily life in town. Decisions as distant as whether or not you can pave your driveway, as to who can build a building, what kind of building it can be, and how tall it can be. So it's a really interesting viewpoint into the town. So when Sue asked me if I'd come and talk, I was delighted, of course. And so I thought I'd give a little bit of a local zoning update, and then talk about what's going on in Hartford. Jill and I were just talking a little bit about some of the activities that's going on. So I'll start with local. So applications are at an historic low. Part of that is pandemic related, but part of it also is, as we know, Connecticut really never recovered from the recession. As we didn't recover, people became less comfortable investing. So we saw less development in town. We saw, for example, 2 subdivisions during 2020 one expired, and at the request of the property owner, another was unraveled. So there was no land, no interest in developing, and so that tells you something about what's going on. There's also been a lot more public interest in development applications of any kind. Social media has provided, in some part, more public interest, but there's an awful lot of misinformation that goes out there. And as you know, the town does not have a social media presence. And so we don't have any way to say, what you just read on Facebook is not accurate, let me correct it for you. And with the Ridgefield Press, at the reduced level that it is now, we really don't have a voice as a town, which I'm concerned about. But when I got on planning and zoning in 2001, we were meeting every Tuesday from September to July, and we had site walks every Sunday. So activity was at that level. Meetings would start at 7:30, and it wouldn't be unusual to start a public hearing at midnight and keep going. So now we are meeting twice a month via Zoom the last year, which I have to tell you, I loved. It's so transparent, it's so easy for anybody to go to a meeting. All you have to do is click on the link, and anybody can come to a planning and zoning meeting. We finally got the town to go digital. We've been trying to get the town to go digital for 5 years, and it took the pandemic to where we finally now have a digital platform where all the applications are uploaded, they're on the town's website, and all you have to do is go find an address, click on the link, and everything's there. So we're finally there, which is great. So the meetings last maybe 90 minutes now, 2 hours. The applications are signs, awning, pergolas, where we don't have big developments. Big development projects in the last 5 years have met with strong public opposition to the point where a couple have pulled their applications just because the opposition was so strong. And others got approvals and then decided not to build. So it's truly a different dynamic, and I'm concerned about it. I don't see how the town thrives if the town doesn't grow. And we're sort of in a holding pattern right now. So, as some of you who know town boards and commissions might have paid attention to a couple of years ago, the town did decide to separate the wetland board from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Traditionally, since 1974, when wetlands regulations were first adopted, the town, or the Board of Selectmen, asked the Planning and Zoning Commission to also serve as the wetland board. So we were the Planning and Zoning Commission and the wetland board. That separation became final in 2019. So for this last year and a half, we have had a separate board. It's going reasonably well. It's an elected board of 7 members. They have revised the regulations. They've increased the upland review areas. They are approving most applications. They're asking for more mitigation than had been requested in the past. But the transition seems to be going pretty well. To give the office staff credit, we have an office staff of 4, a director of the department who's also the zoning enforcement officer, and a town planner, a wetland agent, and an office administrator. And they help manage planning and zoning, wetlands, aquifer protection, and the Architectural Advisory Commission. So we have a lot to be thankful for, that we have such good people willing to wear so many hats in the town, but that's sort of a town thing. We do that anyway. So we recently have a business zone subcommittee looking into we have, excuse me, I'm stumbling around as I form my thoughts. We have multiple business zones in town that allow various uses. So we have the central business district, which we think of as downtown. And then we have B1 zones, which allow retail and all commercial uses. And then B2 and B3, which allow all the commercial uses but don't allow retail. So we're looking at consolidating some of the smaller B zones, giving property owners more opportunities, perhaps. We're also looking at Route 7 again, what we call the Gateway, which is the intersection of Haviland Road North, essentially really 35 and 7 North. We think of it as the gateway into town. Property owners have come to us over the years and said, we're really having a hard time getting viable businesses, so we're looking at that again. We're also looking at Branchville. We always look at Branchville. The town did participate in a study with the state for a TOD overlay. And TOD stands for Transportation Opportunity District. And we have a train station, and we're looking at how can we maximize this. And of course, the obvious answer is it would be great to have another village center down in Branchville. It has a state highway, it has a train station, but it has no sewer. So without sewer, it's going to be very difficult to develop Branchville. The first selectman has talked to Reading for a number of years to see if they will share, but they now have been able to acquire the Gilbert and Bennett Wire Mill property through back taxes. The town now owns it, so they're looking at developing the Gilbert and Bennett Wire Mill, which is why they built the sewer mill in the first place. And so they're not really interested in getting into an interlocal agreement sewer capacity, which would help us a lot in Branchville. The other issues down there are State Highway, Route 7 and 102, and the Norwalk River is right there. So there are a lot of constraints. That doesn't mean we couldn't work with it, but so we're looking at that. One of the other options for sewer is to run a line up Branchville Road to the new and improved sewer treatment facility on South Street, but that's really cost prohibitive. So it's on the table as a thought, but probably not going to be the option the town chooses. And then the other one is community septic systems. So there are some systems that can handle, a reasonable amount of capacity, but not enough to really get any serious development. And then we also just adopted the 2020 Plan of Conservation and Development, which some towns, by state, they are called POCDs, but it's really the master plan for the town. We worked on it for a couple of years, and we have just implemented a subcommittee to implement the recommendations in the POCD. It's the first time we've done that. So we've asked all of the stakeholders, other towns, boards and commissions to come in. So we have Board of Selectmen, Conservation Commission, we're trying to get police and fire to join us, Parks and Rec, We also have the Affordable Housing Committee, oh gosh, who else do we have? I'm trying to remember that we just had a meeting on Monday. Oh, it's so sad. My brain is just, if I don't write it down, it's not always there. Anyway, out of that meeting, it came interesting counter objectives. So the Conservation Commission is looking to add 1,000 acres of additional open space, which would be fabulous. I mean, many people love Ridgefield just because of the trails and the open space. The Affordable Housing Committee wants to add 1,000 units of affordable housing. So you see in the same plan and in the same subcommittee those goals. So we'll probably end up someplace in the middle, which would be great. So that's a big overview, but I think the state of the town right now is not shrinking, but not growing. And it would be nice to see some positive momentum in some of the commercial districts, but when Sue was first selectman, we still had 3 significant corporate clients in town. We had Boehringer Ingelheim, we had Schlumberger Dahl, and we still had, not PerkinElmer, what came after PerkinElmer? SVL or AMSL or something like that. And now we only have Boehringer. So small businesses, Main Street, bless its heart, always seems to do great. It transitions all the time. I hope you heard that we have now gotten the designation as the first cultural district in the state of Connecticut. Thank you, John Fry, right? And thank you, ECDC, that's huge. So the arts community, the restaurant community has really given us a real shot in the arm, and it's been great. So that's wonderful. So the legislative update. Starting last summer, I was approached by the chairs of Westport and Greenwich to join a group of Fairfield County Planning and Zoning chairs who were very concerned about some of the legislative efforts to rewrite zoning laws in the state of Connecticut in an effort to promote as-of-right affordable housing and middle housing density. And so we now have a group of 7 chairs. It's Greenwich, Darien, New Canaan, Wilton, Weston, Westport, and Ridgefield. We've been working with our state legislatures and some of our first selectmen, and the Regional Planning Authority, which is WestCOG, which is the Western Council of Governments. Rudy currently serves as the chair, and the Darien First Selectman, Jamie Stevenson, is the vice chair. And we have been working with them to try and get some influence in the decisions that are being made in Hartford. And our focus has been on 2 of the 12 bills that have been the subject of completely reforming the way zoning regulations approach affordable housing and density. What's interesting is, back in July, the initial push, the group that started this conversation is called Desegregate Connecticut. And a woman named Sarah Bronin has done a wonderful job of getting Connecticut to talk about a very important issue, which is the cost of housing in Connecticut. As we know, it's very high. And I remember having conversations with our sons when they wanted to move into town, and it was a challenge. So it's not just bringing in our young people, but it's also keeping people who would like to retire, shrink their footprint, and stay in town. It's just expensive. So the conversation is timely and well placed, but it was sort of a one-size-fits-all. The state was going to determine how much affordable housing each area should have, and it was going to be as of right. So no planning and zoning approval, no public input, and we don't care what you're doing, we're going to tell you how we think you should do it. Hi, Ann.
How is the federal law affecting that?
You mean the Federal Fair Housing Act? No, this was, their approach was to rewrite the underlying zoning regulations in the state that would remove the authority for certain kinds of development from municipalities.
If we take any kind of government funding, federal funding, all of a sudden you're exposed to their restrictions, and they can sort of dictate to you.
Well, what happened was, through the course of the conversation, the affordable component fell by the wayside. And so the argument transitioned from affordable housing as of right to middle density as of right. and accessory dwelling units as of right, which actually Ridgefield supports and has. But the thinking was, if you built enough density, it automatically pushes the price point down. And so they abandoned the affordable component of it and just started focusing on density. So there were two bills that got a lot of our attention. Initially, it was a Senate bill called 1024. And it was, and I wrote it down, it was requiring that the local zoning decisions would be made at the state level or at a regional housing level. We were going to eliminate all parking requirements, multifamily density around commercial corridors and transportation orientation districts would be at 50% affordable within a half-mile radius, and that middle family, multifamily, which is 2 to 4 units, would be as of right in any single family zone. And accessory dwelling units would be as of right in any residential zone. So that was a lot. And I'm just hitting the high points on this. So actually we were able to get some consideration. The bill has been revised coming out of committee. The Planning and Development Committee of the legislature held a public hearing that literally went for 24 hours without a break. It started at 10 a.m. on March 12th and ended at 10 a.m. on March 13th. I was on from 10 o'clock when it started on Monday, stayed on till 11:30, went to bed, got back up at 6:30, logged back on, and they were still talking. So the first selectman of Darien spoke at 11:30 at night. The executive director of Westcog spoke at 3:30 in the morning. And there were over 100 people who didn't even get to speak because it was just taking too long. But out of committee, the bill has been revised so that the ADUs as of right are still there. The elimination of local control is no longer in the bill. The parking requirements are still in the bill. They have not been eliminated. Multifamily density around commercial corridors and transportation hubs has been removed. And as of right, middle density family development has been removed. So what we have in place are protection of historical, tribal, cultural, and environmental resources, which were not part of the original bill. There was supposed to be, they thought that the term community character was seen as racist and exclusionary. And the word racist got thrown around a lot. And it was surprising to see how many people, when they testified in front of the committee, said, it's offensive. You know, we're working really hard on behalf of our communities. And most of Connecticut's towns are like Ridgefield. We run on volunteers. So volunteers are coming forward, serving on boards and commissions, following the regulations, and then when somebody disagrees with a decision, being called racist, and it was offensive to many people. And they were calling it exclusionary zoning, and that exclusionary zoning on its face was racist. That was true 80 years ago, and we have since come to our senses and revised zoning regulations. That is no longer the case. But it is an inflammatory argument, and it offended a lot of people who would have been natural allies, because we want to work together to solve the problem. But if you start calling us names and telling us that what we're doing is intentional and racist, people start looking for other people to have conversations with. So local zoning regulations may now consider physical site characteristics and architectural content. We are required to promote the use of renewable energy forms, wind and solar. The Commission is in the process of adopting a renewable energy regulation, so we're already there. It will require towns to designate locations in which accessory dwelling units are allowed. We already do that. Ridgefield allows them in every single family zone. It's interesting because we just revised our regulations. We used to allow up to 900 square feet in one bedroom, and it could be attached or detached. And out of these conversations, I approached the Commission and I said, would we be willing to consider going up to 1,200 square feet and 2 bedrooms? Because we had a lot of people during the pandemic approach us and say, we'd like to bring our parents back to our home, but we have a living caregiver. And we'd like to have some independent living space for the caregiver. Or our adult children would like to move home, but we'd like to have some independent living space. So the thinking was, if we bump it up a little to 1,200 square feet and allow 2 bedrooms, we can allow for small families, you know, a single parent and a child could live in an ADU, or a young family with a child, or an older couple with caregiver. And so it was unanimously supported by the commission, but actually social media was quite critical of it. So, you know, see where we go. But we did adopt it, and so we now allow, as of right, in every single family zone, up to 1,200 square feet. If your home is over 3,000 square feet, you can have up to 1,200 square feet, and 2 bedrooms. Under 3,000 square feet, 900. We were concerned about the scope and scale, so you don't want to take a house that's, say, 2,200 square feet and end up having essentially 2 dwelling units of the same size. It becomes a duplex as opposed to a primary and an accessory. So, so we're already there. Darien has asked for our regulation and are in the process of adapting their own. And Westport asked for our regulation and just adopted a version of what we have in Westport. So this collaboration within the Fairfield County chairs is proving to be very beneficial. One of the other interesting things is this bill 6611, which is called the Fair Share Bill. I don't know if you've heard it. There was an event in town over the weekend where a group called Connecticut 169 Strong came in, and they held a rally, Keep Your Hands Off Our Zoning, Keep Planning and Zoning Local. And 6611 is being promoted by a group of primarily big city mayors that are looking at ways to bring more housing diversity into communities that are around them. And so 6611 promotes a concept where each town would have their their affordable housing requirement assessed by the Secretary of OPM. What is OPM? I'm drawing a blank. Did I write it down? No, I forget. The Secretary of, oh gosh, it's so sad. Anyways, Secretary of OPM would put together a work study group that would determine how much affordable housing each municipality should have. Currently, under the state law, each town is required to have 10% of their housing designated as deed restricted affordable, or we are subject to what you may have heard of 830G affordable housing applications, where all zoning regulations go out the window. The building can be as high, it can go property line to property line, no setbacks, no anything. And in the appeals process, if the town adjusts the application or denies the application, the town has the burden of proof in court, and we invariably lose. So the town has a different standard for 830G. Under 6611, each town would be required to have 20% of their housing as deed restricted affordable. Right now, Ridgefield's at 3. So we've been working for 30 years and we're at 3. So out of the 9,200 housing units we have in town, 293 are deed restricted affordable, and it's taken us 30 years to get there. So we don't think we'll ever get to 10%. I don't know how we get to 20%, but these decisions would not be made at the local level. They would be made at the state level, and funding would be attached to it. Bill?
Quick question.
Yeah.
Casagmo and Fox Hill
Yeah.
don't count because they're not deed restricted.
They were built before 1990. So the state only counts units built after 1990 that are deed restricted. So Ridgefield Arms doesn't count, Casagmo, Fox Hill.
Even though they fall within the price line.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we don't think we would be at 10%, but we'd be a lot closer to it if we count those. So the units that are on Prospect and Prospect Ridge, the 3 new buildings behind the police station and down across from the Bark Park, those are 830G buildings. Alex?
How does a district or a particular building that's rated historical historical register or a historical commission in Connecticut affected by the two buildings that are being proposed in Hartford?
No consideration.
None whatsoever,
None.
so they can come in
You
into a
can-
historical district
you
on Main
can-
Street and do what they wanna do?
Right,
Oh, boy.
right. Well, for example, the Elms has been redeveloped over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And one of the big selling points for that development was, we'll keep the front buildings, we'll restore the front buildings, we wanna be able to build in back. And, oh, by the way, you know, we could always bring in an 830G and knock down everything and do what we want. So, it's a challenge. So we tend to negotiate as much as we can at the table. And Ridgefield has really been fortunate. If you drive down county, they have developments of 300 and 400 units that have come in, they've built, we don't have that. The densest building we have is the one out on Route 7 where the Red Lion, I know I'm speaking in generational terms here. So those of you who are new to town, next to the Valero gas station and next to Stonehouse Commons, across from Trinity CrossFit, there are those 2 apartment buildings that are multicolored. That used to be Red Lion Restaurant. And so it burned down, and that has 50 units. Sue?
Oh, has there been any effort made to change the date of 1990 to an earlier date? And no reception?
Every year John Fry was in the legislature, he brought up some aspect of relooking at the 830G legislation. Never gets out of committee. So, we try. Alex?
No, go ahead. I'll come back to that.
So the 6611 bill now has, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
That's okay.
So how does the legislature define affordable?
Thank you, because I'd like to know too. I think we're talking past each other. 830G is, requires that so 830G, I'm speaking of planning and zoning shorthand, I'm sorry. So 830G requires that 30% of the units in a development, a minimum of 30% of the units in a development, be deed restricted affordable. Half at 60% of median income, half at 80% of median income. But the housing advocates for the bills that we're discussing, 1024 and 6611, they're not talking 60 and 80%. They're talking 30%, some subsidized, but it's never been defined. And I can't tell you how many Zoom meetings I've been in talking about this stuff, and I can't get an answer. How are we defining affordable? And it hasn't been defined. So we're not sure. But right now, affordable in the working vernacular of most people on planning and zoning commissions is 60% and 80%. Now, Affordable Housing Committee is talking 30%, and Section 8 and subsidized housing, which is vouchers. And as far as we have been able to determine, we have 1 Section 8 housing unit in town. So, Alex? Yeah, sorry.
I was trying to figure out how to say it diplomatically.
Yes,
How
because
much
the
of
meeting's being recorded.
Yeah, that's right. How much of a backbone does your first selectman committee, the commission, have as far as they're coming out with all of these very worthwhile positions, but between, you know, the progressives in Hartford and maybe even from the federal government jumping on them, you know, are they gonna be able to make a stand against that?
Ridgefield Planning and Zoning Commission has testified against 5 bills that are currently up in planning, development, and housing. We're getting ready to testify against 6611. So that testimony goes into the mix. We've had very good support from our state senator. He's been very effective in reaching out. I've had maybe 8 conversations with him since September, trying to understand what exactly is going on, where are the bills, what is the likelihood that these are gonna come out of committee. If he doesn't know, he goes in, he gets the answer, and he calls me back. We've had multiple Zooms within the 26th district with the other planning and zoning chairs, and our legislative representatives believe that something will happen, but that it will be watered down. the cities have a lot of influence in the committees that are making these kinds of decisions. So for example, 6611, 7 of the cities would not have any affordable housing requirements because they would be below the threshold that's required. And that's a bill written that's coming out of the cities. So, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I want to take you back to something you said earlier on.
Sure.
I thought when there was huge discussion in the town, certainly in the Ridgefield press, about the consolidation of the sewage and the rebuilding of the sewage farm, there were 2 pertinent points. One was the capacity was already in excess of what the remodeled place was going to be able to handle.
Right.
And of course there's been subsequent debate about the increases in the sewage charges to businesses and residences. So I don't understand how you can be talking about, looking at connecting things to the sewage system that's already overloaded in capacity and overpriced. So how do you reconcile it? Because you've got to do something if you're going to expand.
Well, we do. And the conversations around the sewage treatment project were very specific, that the town did not want to add capacity. So the capacity that was being added was to bring the Route 7 plant.
Route 7 up,
right,
yes.
to bring that up. So it was going to incorporate that within the South Street plant. The thinking is that there has been so much loss through leaks in the system and inefficiency in the system that there is additional capacity there. I've had multiple conversations with the Planning and Zoning Administrator, WPCA Administrator, and the previous chair, not so much the recent chair. And we have always asked the question, how does WPCA allocate capacity? And their answer has been, if Planning and Zoning approves it, we will find the capacity. So it seems to be a question that's hard to answer, but we have never had a project approved by Planning and Zoning then get denied by WPCA. And if Planning and Zoning is only one step. And so a development project requires Planning and Zoning approval, but it also requires, it has to conform to building code, there may be some issues with wetlands, there may be some issues with the fire marshal, and then there's WPCA capacity that's in the sewer district. So we're one step along the way. So we could approve something, but if the capacity is not there, it won't get built. Yeah.
When I was on the Ridgefield committee, there was, one of the options was talking to the people, the first selectman in Wilton.
Right.
Because they had excess capacity. And she was sort of on the fence, and we were trying to, entice her and all of that. Did that sort of die in the vine?
Yes, they're now interested in reaching an interlocal with Reading as well.
Yeah, because that would pretty
Yeah.
much help the development of Branchville.
It would? Oh,
That was one of
absolutely.
the critical things that we needed for that.
It still is.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Thurn.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Thanks for coming.
Sure.
Question you just mentioned as an engineer, I sort of hit the sense in the bone here. So there's a lot of leakage in our sewer system.
Oh, gosh.
What,
Yeah.
what the hell is that doing to our groundwater?
Well, that I don't know, but the center of town, which is District 1, has mostly the existing 100-year-old clay pipes. And so when we lived next door to Sue, so we were up on the hill, we were connected to sewer, but it went back to Prospect Ridge. And our behind us neighbor, so it was our house, the carriage house that was broken off, and then another house behind. And there was some wetlands over there between the back house and the ball field. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm assuming everybody knows where we live. This was on East Ridge, next to the middle school. And so there's the ball field, our old house, Sue's house, and so, anyway, we had a break in the sewer line. And they told us that the clay pipe had cracked, had crumbled, and we had to go in and fix it. And so it was leaking into the wetlands. And we called somebody and they came in and fixed it. And what's happening is, as developments come through, for example, when Mr. Zemo built the building at the corner of Governor and Prospect Ridge, in order to get sewer allocation approved, WPCA required that he make an improvement to the sewer line down on Roland Lane, because it was a collection point. So we have a similar instance going on right now where there's a project that's been approved between Prospect Street and Sunset for, you know where Wisteria Gardens is? There's a project has been approved that will mirror that right next to it. And in order to get WPCA approval, that property needed to improve the collection system down at the point of Sunset Lane and Prospect. So there are issues throughout the downtown area where the old clay pipes are still in use, but have a lot of cracks and voids. The town did a study about 3 years ago, maybe more. Last year seems to be a blur, so I'm never sure if it's 3 or 4 years ago. And they literally went through each of the pipes and they tested the pipes to see if steam would rise out of the pipes. And they found out that there were cracks and voids all over the place. So, yeah, it's one of the challenges.
Sewer lines on Main Street were relined in the 90s,
Okay,
Becky,
yeah,
early
yes.
90s.
can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
This is great. I can't get over how much information you've packed in.
20
we've
years.
been bombarding you with questions. I didn't know if you had anything else you wanted to present. Do you want to take a couple more questions? I just
Sure.
don't want to monopolize your entire evening.
Not at all.
As you've
I
been
was-
you've been talking, I mean, I just don't want to
That's
keep
fine.
you
I
here
was
at
just
midnight.
talking broad. The legislative push is serious. And the concern is that if nobody lets the legislature know that there are concerns about this, that language that have unintended consequences might make its way through. So, the Fairfield County chairs have been very proactive. There have been a lot, I mentioned 169 Strong, which is a group of community leaders who are going around from town to town trying to create enthusiasm to just inform the towns what's going on. So many towns like us don't have a town paper that really presents the issues in front of the people the way they used to 10 or 15 years ago. Weston, for example, has no paper at all now. And Weston is very concerned because they have no affordable housing. They have 200 units of accessory dwelling units, but no affordable housing. They have no sewer. So they're concerned that if this legislation passes, a group of Yale law students could come in and bring a suit against them for not having any affordable housing in town, which is what's happening to Woodbridge, Connecticut right now. So we're trying to stay current on it, but at times it's almost overwhelming. Some of the bills are so poorly written, it's hard to understand what they're saying. And if you go through and you read the legislation, you think you understand it, you get down to the next section, and it almost goes against what was in the earlier sections. Maybe it's intentional.
It is,
Yeah, I hate to
course
be
it is.
suspicious, but yeah,
it is.
yeah. But we seem to be getting some movement. The bill that came out of the Planning and Development Committee for 1024 removed a lot of the more extreme measures. Trying to keep the energy level up. So, any questions that I didn't, oh, I'm done?
That's great.
Oh, yes, sir.
I want to thank you, Rick.
Oh, sure.
Thank you for, this is all volunteer work that you do.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
yes.
My compliment.
Okay.
I mean, really, for all the time you put in, I don't think people really appreciate or recognize what you're doing, so thank you.
You're very kind.
Along with that, did you ever know Charles Creamer?
Sure.
Our club gives out every year an award in the spring called Citizen of the Year. And it was given to him because of all of his volunteer work on the
Zoning Board of
zoning
Appeals.
board. Yes,
Yes.
appeals.
Yes,
He did this like for, I think, 25 years.
40.
Fine.
40 years.
So, again, all volunteer, and you look at all the hours, so I know I speak on everybody here to say thank you
Oh, you're welcome.
for all the hours that you put in and try to help us out, so thank you very
Thank you.
much.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Alex, we skipped you. I think we need to do that.